For this week's Jpost Zoomcast, I'm happy to introduce World WIZO chairperson Anita Friedman. Friedman, originally from Colombia, has been a member of the Women's International Zionist Organization for over 25 years, during which she has filled many positions both in Israel and abroad. In 2013, Anita returned to Israel and was appointed deputy chairperson of the fundraising department at WIZO, and 2 years later was elected as the department's chairperson. Under her leadership, WIZO extended its fundraising activities, expanding its inventory of hundreds of welfare and educational services, which include daycare centers, schools, youth villages for at-risk youth, shelters for abused women, and more. In 2020, she was chosen to be the chairperson of the organization. Anita, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you for your kind introduction.
Pleasure. WIZO has been dealing with the issue of women's welfare for so long, both in the aspects of domestic abuse and also sexual abuse. But it feels like Israel is barely inching forward, even at a crawl. Can you tell me what is holding the country back from preventing such horrible instances, such as domestic abuse and even murder?
Well, violence in the family is a national blight. We call it the silent pandemic. This is something that has been with us forever. And it's not only a problem of Israel, of course, but we're here. And just now, because of the coronavirus, this problem came to the public's awareness. It's been with us. It crosses all socioeconomical layers. It crosses all religions. It just happens everywhere. Now, the state of Israel has been a little bit slow responding. For the past 25 years, we've had 14 shelters in Israel for abused women. Because of the coronavirus pandemic and the fact that it became like a pressure, a cooker pressure for families, it raised the amount of instances that we know about. It's not that they don't happen, it's just that it came about that we know about it by 20%. I mean, if you think about it, in Israel right now, according to the welfare ministry numbers, we have around 200,000 women under the cloud of violence, with them 600,000 children. And if you count the whole thing, it's about 1 million people are day-to-day living with this blight. Now, organizations like ours have been fighting and advocating and trying to legislate and actually doing work on the ground to take care of this issue. We at WIZO view this issue not as a women's issue. This is a societal issue. This is a sickness of our society, and we all need to make sure that we take care of it. So yeah, you're right. The Israeli government has not done what it's supposed to do, and organizations like WIZO have been filling the gap.
So what do you think is expected of the government to do moving forward?
Okay, so first of all, as I said, this pandemic brought into the public awareness the issue of violence in the family in general. And it also brought about that it's everybody's business. You know, we came out with campaigns and with slogans and with the message that it's everybody's business. If you hear your neighbor fighting, just intervene, find out what's happening, call the police. Now, because we look at it in a holistic way, we have a few ways of dealing with it. First of all, I believe personally, and we also in WIZO, education is the key issue. If people are not aware of it, if we do not educate our children since they're young, zero tolerance to violence in every aspect of life, not only inside the family, nothing is going to happen. We do have some programs that we have running in different schools and even in the Army. One of them, I'll give you an example, is called Mine and Only Mine, in Hebrew, Sheli V'Rak Sheli, which teaches children, young adults, to recognize the different signs of violence and to pay attention to the cycles and circles of violence around themselves, to make sure that they know that if a relationship has certain signs, it's not a healthy relationship, and just to identify that, okay? We feel that the government, look, the issue of violence in the family is treated in different offices. And there needs to be a synergy between these offices. What do I mean? When a woman comes to first responder to the emergency room, they call the social worker, who calls the police, and the system starts working, right? Mm-hmm. But we find that even these professional people do not know how to relate and how to take care of these issues inside the family. So first and foremost, we call on the government to create, we call it to create an overlapping and a body that takes care of all this synchronicity between the police, between the social workers, between the hospitals, and even the judges. This is to prevent again, a woman comes to us when she's in trouble, and sometimes we find that the police, first responders, and everybody victimize her a second time because they don't treat her the way she should be treated, okay? Of course, we call on the government to legislate in such a way that deters perpetrators, and once these perpetrators are caught or they do something, they get the right punishment. You know, we just saw the Shira Isakov's court decision, and we're very happy with the results, but this is just one instance. And I wonder, because she was very personable and she became the voice, and all the lights were on her. This happened the way it happens, but we need to make sure that every man, every person that commits violence gets the right treatment, and we're not there yet. I'm not so sure that if away from the lights, he would have received the same punishment, okay? Mm-hmm. And also we call on the government to give the right amounts of money that we need in order to take care of these blights.
So what's the issue with the funding at the moment? Can you explain that, please?
We had the government 3 years ago decided to give us 10 million shekels in order to fight and to make sure that we take care of these people. Unfortunately, at that time, the Ministry of Welfare did not use the funds the correct way, and they were given back to the government. So this is just one of the issues. We're not there yet. They don't understand the importance of prevention, of education, of making sure that the professionals on the ground know what to do and how to take care of this. I'll give you another example. We have a program called the Invisible Child. This program teaches professionals that come in touch with children to identify the child if he is in an environment that is violent, okay? But these are things that we pay from our pocket. What do I mean? We get donations, and through these donations, the government does not participate in these type of projects and programs. We need the government to step up and find the necessary budget to take care of this. Because social organizations, with all due respect, we can do so much, but at the end of the day, the big money has to come from the government. We can do pilots. We are the ones that create the projects, create the programs. We can bring the solution, but the money has to come from the government. I can give you examples of the projects and programs we have. We as an organization that has been around for 101 years, have a lot of experience. We are at the forefront in the battle in Israel against violence. We are going for legislation vis-a-vis the government. We're activists. We create projects to educate, and we create projects to prevent, okay? But we need on the other side the partnership to make sure that these projects are funded and that everybody has a way to get to these projects and these programs. Otherwise, it's not enough. For example, we have something very unique, which is a hotline for violent men. that is staffed mainly only by men. And violent man or man on the verge of violence, they call. And our purpose is to bring them to therapy. You know, a lot of times, I know you're going to ask me this, but a lot of people ask, why should the women be incarcerated in the shelters? Why shouldn't the men be removed? Why shouldn't the men? And we're looking at that, and we're looking at solutions. And for us, one of the most important things is to bring these men to therapy, which is not an easy issue, you know. So we're trying to develop programs in that respect. We do have. What else do you want to ask me?
Well, actually, on the subject, you mentioned earlier that the kind of programs that you're doing is also for prevention, such as this men's hotline. I'm curious, let's say in the case of somebody like Shira Isakov, who for viewers is a woman who was the victim of an attempted murder by her now ex-husband, who last week was convicted for said attempted murder. How would such programs assist in such circumstances, for example?
Okay, so this is a very good question, because that's another part of the problem. You know, when the women get into the system, they come to shelters. WIZO runs 2 of these shelters. We have 14 in the state of Israel. And now, because of the pandemic, the state of Israel decided to open 2 more after 25 years, which is a great thing. And by the way, I must say here that we were very proactive at the beginning of the pandemic when we saw the rise in the amount of women that were asking for help. And we, together with the Ministry of Welfare, opened and operated an emergency shelter where we would bring women and their children for 2 weeks to make sure they were not sick, and then we would send them to different shelters, okay? So the way it works, women comes to our shelter, she's there ideally for a year, where we give her tools, we work therapy with her children, and we empower her. But when they get out of these shelters, they're pretty much by themselves. The government doesn't support them, nobody does. So we also identified that problem, and we have a special program called Safety Net, where these women, after they come out of the shelter, and you know, they come out of the shelter, they have a job usually, and they have school for their children. And again, we developed this during the pandemic. Why? Because the first people to lose their jobs were these women. They are menial jobs, usually very lowly paid. And the moment they couldn't take care of themselves, you know, there's a big risk that they would go back to their abusers. So we identified this issue, and we created something called Safety Net, where we take care of, we have mentors, we have volunteers, and we have professionals, and we fundraise for these women. What do I mean? We make sure that if they don't have a job, at least they have money to pay their bills. We make sure that the children have kaitanot, have camps during the summer, so these women can go out again and find a job. We make sure that they have food in their houses, that they have electricity. I mean, we give them the support that they need in order not to go back and revert to the situation they had before. So someone like Shira, she's already after she is very much in touch, and we took her under our wing in the center in Carmiel. And kudos to the volunteers there and to the chairperson of WIZO Israel, Ora Corazin. They are the ones on the ground working with these women day in and day out and making sure that they don't revert. Someone like Shira, we gave her support from the center. It was after the matter, as you said, but I think if she wants, she needs support, an organization like WIZO is the one that gives her the therapy she needs, the empowerment she needs, and the help she needs.
I see. In a sharp turn, I want to discuss a little bit also sexual abuse. Actually, last week marked exactly 1 year before since the country went into a state of shock over the case of a 16-year-old girl being gang raped in Eilat's Red Sea Hotel. It's been 1 year since then, as mentioned, but it doesn't really feel like so much change has come on despite the public awareness. Has anything been advanced that you see as a turning point for the prevention of sexual abuse in Israel?
Tamar, that's a very good question. Look, I connect that straight with the violence in our society in general. The way we educate our kids, gender awareness, the way we educate our youth, the messages and the messages they receive. And again, at the end of the day, it comes also to the judicial system, which is not stern enough or authoritative enough to make sure that these people receive the punishment that they should receive. So it's a bigger problem than just making strides. I think it's an educational problem in our society. And if we do not take care of it since day one, we're going to continue seeing things like this.
I see. But nonetheless, we were discussing how these trauma rooms were opened in several hospitals shortly afterwards. Is there any kind of medical response that you're seeing that might be nevertheless helpful after the fact, rather than as a very much necessary preventative measure?
Again, as with the issue of violence in the family, you have to train professionals on the field to make sure that they treat these people right. Otherwise, they won't come out and complain or go to court. If they don't feel like they have a backing and they have the professional need that they need, it won't happen. I haven't seen much change. I'm hoping that it's because of COVID that we will see a change after everything passes. The hospitals are overwhelmed. I really hope that they receive the support that they need.
I see. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Anita. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. And thank you for helping us bring out awareness to these issues, which are everybody's issues. So important. Thank you.